So the past few years I've been thinking a lot about apparitions, and I'm defining it as in its really most basic way. So an apparition as the sort of juxtaposition of two dimensions. So when a ghost appears in a house, it's the mix of the world of the dead with the world of the living, or when an angel appears, it's the mix of the divine with the human world. And in the context of this show, I was thinking of it really in relation to the real space and light of the gallery, in relation to the pictorial space that's depicted in the paintings. And I thought about apparitions really in response to the perceptive conditions of our time. So it was a way of thinking through how to deal with our perceptive modes that are sort of dominant and that result in a hasty or distracted gaze, where I think it breeds a sort of blindness and disconnect. And I think that happens through two different aspects of perception. One is a pre-visual mode that I think we all experience, which is, seeing things really before you encounter their real form. So seeing digital images of things. The Grand Canyon, which is part of the painting behind me, is a good example of something that's been, overly seen in a mediated form before, or if ever experienced. And the pre-visual sort of results in an indirect sight, I think, a disembodied or disconnected experience with things. And then the other mode or condition that I was thinking about was one that I call a bittersweet perception, which really originates for me from my own experiences being in and from Lebanon, where you sort of see things with a knowledge of their potential disappearance. And so there's a sort of consciousness or an intensified view of things because you see them thinking that they won't last or they won't be there. And so apparitions and a sort of apparitional mode of perception was something that I started thinking about as a way of integrating and subverting, if you want, some of these perceptive conditions in order to create another perceptive mode that would allow for longer suspended time, a sense of presence, a more embodied way of looking at things. I work from photographs, and actually within each image that I choose to paint from, I really look for a crack, if you want, or an opening where I can insert a duration or intensify a force like light or tectonics or time, or something that I see a hint of in the image that I can expand on in the painting. And when I start painting it, the way I try to intensify that force and create this apparitional perception, if you want, is to use a really limited palette and very small contrasts and changing density of mark to really create a surface that your eye has to work to discern and see. And so what I hope happens is that the image appears all at once, but as it appears, you also become really aware of the conditions of the light in the room that you're seeing the painting from, and how much time it actually takes and how much attention it takes to really see the image. And in that act, what I hope is happening is that you are becoming more aware of your embodied experience of looking, and as well as of another kind of image presence sort of confronting you, which for me comes from this mixing and slight confusion between what you're seeing and then what feels like is happening, like the light is sort of glowing from a painting, and it's unclear whether it's a real light reflecting off the surface or a light kind of emanating the pictorial space. So I look a lot at other painters, and someone I've looked at recently is Alex Katz, and particularly his environmental, or what he calls environmental paintings. And in he speaks a lot about a quick light, where he tries to capture a glimpse or an ephemeral moment and sort of extend it to eternity. So something like a smile or a babbling brook, where he'll simplify it to its basic forms and movements. And then when I see the image, it immediately connects to sort of a mental image I already have of that thing, but allows me to see it freshly or in a way for the first time. So he really deals also with this saturated visual field, or what I'm calling the pre-visual that we live in. And unlike him, I think more of a slow light. So while we share this idea of an image appearing all at once and connecting to a sort of consciousness. What I'm trying to do is expand this experience of presence or present tense, looking into the eternal, and so that the image can appear slowly and then persist in front of you. And both these ways, while they're different, they still rely on this full image appearing, which is really different, I think, than other painters that I've looked a lot at, Monet, Signac, Seurat, who really created images to intervene in their perceptive modes, but through a synthetic gaze. So they would, create paintings that used, multiple parts, color, line, composition, that then the viewer had to really synthesize or put together for the whole image to appear. So I think a lot about beauty, and in particular in relation to the places that I used as the starting point for most of the paintings in this show. And the way I think of beauty is really as an encounter with a force. And again, that force can be a sort of oversaturating light in a canyon or a shimmering sea, certain tectonics or certain experiences of time. All of those sort of serve as a way where the encounter places you in the present tense, and you become really aware of yourself encountering the force via that being, mountain or thing in front of you. And so how I think about that is really that it creates a sense of present tense, but also of expansiveness and a kind of freedom, if you want, from the everyday or normal concerns. And so in that sense, it really opens up space on a lot of different levels, temporal, spatial, mental. And so what I'm trying to do in the show is create paintings also that can trigger a perceptive experience that is similar to that I have of beauty as an encounter. And so the way I use the apparitional form in the painting is really so that when you're looking at a painting, you are deciphering it and becoming aware of the pictorial space, and in that ambiguity between the real light and the light that you're seeing represented, there is a kind of sort of stutter, if you want, or a moment that kind of interrupts the normal flow of time and kind of serves to ground you in the present. And for me, that kind of experience is something that counters and subverts our, way of being and looking in the world normally.